Hi guys, welcome to a new episode of Inspirations TV. So today I am going to not be interviewing a guest. I'm just going to talk directly to you. I haven't done that in a while, I think since like the very beginning of the year. So today's episode is really about following up with you guys on your 2021 intentions and your visions for the year. So what's interesting is that I hosted my first video vision board workshop back in January. I can't believe January is already come and gone. But the reason why I'm following up with you is because apparently, statistically speaking, January 16th, I think, is the cutoff of when people just sort of throw away their visions or their intentions or their resolutions, whatever it is that you like to call it. I don't call them resolutions anymore because it just doesn't really fit for me anymore. So I really just refer to my visions as visions and intentions for the year and my objectives, things that I am going to do, not that I want to do or I kind of want to do or I should do or I need to do, but things that are important to me. Because every year I want to make sure that I'm making progress in my life. So I want to follow up with you guys because, for one, like I said, there's so much talk about statistically people, kind of giving up very easily. And I always think about life in the form of metaphors. And one of the things that I remember hearing a friend of mine say, I think it was before my first video vision board workshop of the year. And she said, I don't think I'm going to go because I just really don't know what I want. I don't know what I want to do. I know I want change, but I don't know really what it is. And I thought, that's really interesting. And for me, I know everybody had a very different experience in 2020, and some people are feeling as though 2020 sucked and it was awful. And I think that as much as there was a lot going on, if you were fortunate enough to be on the fortunate end of 2020, then it's really an important time of great reflection. I learned so much more about myself in 2020 than I think I would have if I would have just been still living my same routine life. I was given the opportunity to work from home. I was able to launch my t-shirt line last year, do my website for my t-shirt line, get all of my quotes up, really start building my following. And it was a really, really productive year for me. And sometimes the only difference between, having a productive year versus not having a productive year is you. Okay. And I could have just as easily said, oh, well, 2020, how can I really launch a t-shirt line during 2020? That doesn't really make any sense. It's not really realistic. And I want to tell you guys something about realistic. Sometimes the only difference between what's realistic and what's not realistic is your expectation, is your standard. And so I'm always talking in metaphors, and I'm always thinking of metaphors to kind of personify a point. And one of the things that really stood out to me, because I get a lot of inspiration in the shower, because I don't know why. I guess because I don't have a pen and paper while I'm in the shower, and I don't have anything to write on, and I don't have my phone in the bathroom when I'm taking my shower, because I don't like the steam like getting in my phone. But one of the things that I realize is that we give up a lot, and some of us more than others. And I think that there's something really to that. And I think that sometimes we don't call it giving up because we want to be easy and gentle with ourselves. And you guys know my thing on that, being gentle with yourself. I think it's a beautiful idea that our spiritual egos kind of use as a way to just kind of forfeit responsibility at times. So we're going to be talking about that very soon with an upcoming episode with Nando Rodriguez, who is going to be talking to us about imposter syndrome. So I'm really excited about that. But the thing is that being gentle with yourself is not the same as bullshitting yourself. And so what I'm realizing, I don't know why, but all of a sudden, I got this vision of when kids are learning how to walk, and how it's a very long process for them. They're rolling over, and then they're crawling, and then they're walking, and then they're running, and then they run all like crazy. Like they always look like they're gonna fall when they're running, when they're really tiny. But what I thought about was how even as a child, we have this spirit about us that doesn't give up. I mean, just remember, I have memories of, being a kid and having to take one step at a time when you were going up a staircase with an adult, and you just couldn't figure out how they could get their whole foot up on that step and then get their whole other foot up on this step above it. And I just remember that. I remember having to put one, my right foot up on this step, and then my left foot up on this step. And then the next time I do my left foot up on this step, and then my right foot up on this step. And it wasn't this fluid thing. It was very methodical and well thought out. It was very strategic. You didn't really know. You knew what you were doing, but you still were in that practice mode, right? And now we can like scale up a bunch of stairs or down a bunch of stairs, and it's no big thing, and we don't really even think about it. But I think one of the things that we forget is that we used to have to think about it. We used to have to really concentrate and really work at it. And one of the things that I'm remembering is that as hard as it was, we didn't give up. We didn't give up. We kept doing it. There was no point in which we were sitting on the steps, pouting and going, yeah, I don't really want to do this anymore. This is just too hard. Can you just pick me up? And granted, yeah, sometimes as kids, like you want to be picked up and carried once you're tired. But in that phase of where you are learning to walk and learning to take steps in your life, you see where I'm going with this? It doesn't even occur to us to give up as kids. Not even 3 years old. I mean, barely. I mean, it just doesn't even occur to us. And what happens along the way of life is that we experience, disappointments and setbacks. And so when it comes time to set this new intention for the new year or for our life and our journey, for the new month, for the new week, whatever, for the new day, we consider it way too soon. We consider giving up way too soon. And I just really thought about that, and I just kind of took a step back when I heard my mind say, hey, remember this? I'm going to download this thought in here because you're looking for inspiration for your next episode. So, and I'm always looking for inspirations of quotes to make and things to write about. I'm in the process of writing 2 different books now. And what I noticed is that if we can just tap into that relentless spirit, that resilient spirit that we had as kids, nothing could stop us. Nothing could stop us, because it never occurred to us as a kid that maybe we wouldn't get it. Maybe we wouldn't make that step. Maybe we wouldn't get to the top of the staircase. And sometimes we didn't, but the thing is, we didn't really give up. It never crossed our minds to just go, you know what, this like falling down thing was really annoying and it really sucks and I'm tired of falling down. So I'm just gonna like sit on the floor and stay seated on the floor and just crawl, because you know what, that's easier. And in that sense, I feel like as adults, we are less connected from that part of us. And I think it's so important to reconnect with that part of us. And just think, if you could do it then, right? If you could do it then, if you could take another step again, if you could go up another stair again, as many times as you fell, and remember like the shin scraping that like really hurt, like just kind of like scrape your shin, or it just wasn't this fluid, comfortable thing that you did. And now, and I'm not saying that we should never look for comfort, but I think we look a little bit too much for comfort. And I think we get really hard on other people for holding us accountable for our actions. And our parents, never in the time that our parents were being patient with us and learning how to walk and learning how to climb stairs, never once did we say, hey mom, you're being too mean, you're being judgmental because you're telling me again, try again, it's okay, you got it, I'm here. But as adults, we build up these weird little defense mechanisms, and we get so defensive when someone, doesn't give up on us. And what's interesting is that we have to make up our minds, right? Do you want someone to give up on you? Or do you want someone to fight for you, right? Do you want someone to be that voice against all adversity that's going on in your mind? Do you want that person or those people around you that are going to challenge you and say, you know what, you can get up again? And I have I have a lot of quotes that I did, and it's all based on just different conversations that I've had with people over the years, and things that people say, oh, that was really good, you should write that down. So I officially started writing things down, right? And because sometimes things come to us through inspiration, they just kind of flow through us, and then they flow out of us, and then we forget the lesson, we forget what we said, but it's always still in there. But I started writing down these quotes because I just felt like we always need reminders of what it is that we're capable of. And we need reminders of, when we aren't living up to the best version of ourselves. So one of the quotes that I'm going to mention is, sometimes, okay, it's my own quote and then I'm going to butcher it, right? So it's not probably verbatim, but I'm going to ad lib at least and you'll get the gist. But one of my quotes is, sometimes that which we call judgment is just inconvenient accountability. I'm going to say that one again. Okay. Sometimes that which we call judgment is just inconvenient accountability. And I really want to drive this home because, I've personally been in, relationships before, whether it was a friendship or a romantic relationship, where that person said, hey, all right, I want to do this. And this is my goal. And, remind me to do that. And then I'd remind them and they get defensive with me and bite my head off. And I'm like, wait, you told me to remind you. And I'm not saying anything to you that is not in alignment with what you've told me that is for your highest good, and you want to be supported in that. And so what I've realized is that, well, I'm going to kind of take a page out of Eckhart Tolle's book, literally. And so one of the things that Eckhart Tolle said in his book that really grabbed me right away and got my attention like that, and that's the reason why I read The Power of Now, is because of this one part. And he's talking in the very beginning of the book about being so depressed that he almost felt like he was suicidal. He didn't feel like he could even, function anymore in society. He was just that, that low and that depressed in his life. And he was, I think he said he was contemplating suicide, I believe. But one of the things that he said is that he said, I can't live with myself anymore. That's what he said. I cannot live with myself anymore. And he said in that moment, and for those of you who've read the book, you'll know what I'm talking about, but those of you who haven't, I encourage you to read it. And what he said is that what occurred to me is that there were two of me. And that's how he came up with his term pain body, which we also refer to as the ego. And he was saying, who is the myself that I can't live with anymore? And so I really want to mention that today because I think it's so key and core to who we are, is that when we are saying an inspirational quote, or we hear an inspirational quote, whether it's in the form of a scripture or something we hear on a podcast or a TV show or video or what have you, and even the personal development books, I've heard people have very convoluted interpretations of what a self-help book is telling them. And it's one of those things where we have our inner being, and then we have what I actually refer to as the spiritual ego. I'd say there's three of us. So I say that there's our own inner being that always knows all the time, that is all knowing, whether we know it or not, whether we're conscious enough or not, to not filter out that strong thought with a weaker, lower vibrational thought. So there's our inner being, our ego, and then our spiritual ego. So the spiritual ego and the ego are very similar. Here's what the ego does. The ego just says, "Oh, shut up, you're nagging me." Okay, that's the ego, right? In its truest form. Uncensored, just straight with how they're feeling, going with the feeling emotion, right? And the spiritual ego will take text from, again, like from whether it's scripture or a personal development book, and it will say, should be gentle with me. Everybody needs gentleness. You don't have to be so hard on yourself all the time. Okay. Well, here's the thing, is that when you're reading a book, when you're reading or listening to personal development content, three of you hear this information, okay? Your spiritual ego, and your inner being. And so your inner being knows when you're saying something like that you're really just taking this text and you're using it in a way to appease your ego. Your ego wants to say, "Oh, shut up, you're nagging me, you're so annoying." But your spiritual ego will put a little spiritual spin on it and say, "Oh, okay, this, I'm going to just recite what I read," instead of saying, "You know what, this is how inner being would show up in this moment." And it would say, "You know what, I appreciate you holding me accountable to this thing. And I'm really struggling with being held accountable to this thing right now. And I see that you recognize that. And that's something that I still have to work on." That's how the inner being responds. Especially when the inner being is part of the conversation, or they're saying, "Hey, I want to be held accountable to do this thing. Send out 3 resumes a week," or send out, whatever it is, right? So I just really want to drive that point home, because I think that we have to be aware of when our spiritual ego is at play. And we have to be able to talk back to it and say, "You know what, that's exactly not what the personal development book was trying to say. That's not at all what it was trying to say. And this is how we can respond better in this situation. This is how we can show up in this situation and give compassion towards people who are holding us accountable without judging us." Judging us is like, "Hey, asshole, you said you were going to do A, B, C, D, F, G. All right, that's judgmental." Okay, we're identifying, when you're identifying behavior and not attacking the person, that is not judgment. Okay, that is not being negative. All right, that is following through on an agreement that you have made with another person, and you see that that person is having an opportunity to show up and achieve this goal, whatever it is, this objective, this intention, and you're seeing that and you're recognizing that in them. So if you're the one who's on the receiving end of feeling defensive and feeling like somehow you need to defend that, that's your work. Okay? That's your work. That's not their work. Your work is to show up and respond by corresponding and say, yes, I do remember that you said that I was going to do this thing. I remember we said that, we talked about it. There was a full-on conversation and we were in agreement that this is something that is optimal for my growth, my healing, my finances, whatever it is, right? So I want to say that because this all really ties back into what I was saying earlier about setting and fulfilling our intentions for 2021. It is now, we finished the first week of February already. January is come and gone. And do you know what your intentions are yet? So, when you're watching like your third episode of Netflix, or you're scrolling through your second hour of Twitter, or you are just kind of not doing anything, like Googling mindlessly online and not really getting anywhere and not doing anything really productive with your time. Granted, there are times to completely screw off, and everybody should have their screw off times, and there's times to be in flow, and there's times to just be in structure. There are times to be in structure. And so one of the things that I have noticed with myself as I get better, and it is a process. You're not just going to automatically change one day, right? It doesn't always happen like that. We are incrementalists, whether we realize it or not. And it's just a matter of how conscious we are and how incrementally we go from one level to another. So it's just so important that we take the time to, to just really reflect and see, okay, all right, I had a good few days last week. All right, how can I optimize my time to have more time this week? So as I was saying, one of the things I noticed about me was that last year, it took me, I didn't even start looking into going to see, screen printers until like June or July. I think it was actually July, which granted, not all of that was my fault because of the pandemic and everything was closed and open and closed and open. So there's that. But there were other things that I could have been doing from home a lot sooner. There were ways in which I could have been optimizing my time a lot sooner. And to say that about myself is not being hard on myself. Okay. It's not being judgmental. It's not lacking in gentility in any way to say that I could have started this sooner so that way I wasn't rushed at the last minute, kind of scrambling. Oh my gosh. Okay. What's it? And when we do that, we're not really being kind to ourselves by procrastinating. So I'm really excited for next week's episode. I think it's going to air next week, but I'm not sure. But the imposter syndrome one is a really big one. And so I just think that it's so important for us to recognize these weird little quirks of our spiritual ego and how it will pretend that it's speaking in our best interest, or it's behaving in our best interest. And sometimes when we just feel like not doing something, we will search for a quote that makes it sound like we're actually doing something spiritual by sitting by and screwing off and not following through. And that means something when we're doing that. And we'll delve more into that in another episode. But one of the things that I have noticed in my progress, because again, it's progress, not perfection, right? And, but one of the things that I noticed I was very proud of was that, so last year I got up to, I think about 22,000 words in one of my books. And then this year I was, going back to writing the book, and I got another, couple, 2,000-3,000 words in the first book. And then I just had on my heart that there was another message that I needed to be writing about. And just as a little teaser, I mean, the message is about forgiveness. And my journey through forgiveness and really understanding the layers of forgiveness. And sometimes the people that you think that you need to forgive are not the number one people that you are upset with. And that's been a very interesting thing. So it's a great read. And I've already gotten some really good feedback from a few people that I've shared the content with. But one of the things I want to say about that is that while in my mind I was thinking, well, no, I have to go back and finish this book. I mean, I'm already at least a third of the way through. And then, but something in my inner being was calling. I was just like, you have to, there's some stuff coming up for you. And there's just a lot of stuff coming up from me from a lot of things that I learned and uncovered about myself last year. And once I started writing, before I knew it, I think in a matter of a few weeks, I already had over 10,000 words written. And then I looked at it again, and then I had 12,000 words written. Then I had 14,000 words written. And now I'm working on this new business venture that's an extension of Inspirations. And I tell you, what is so fascinating is that, you know, as long as it took me to even get started on my t-shirt website, as long as it took me to get started, and I could have gone on Shopify and I could have gotten 3 months free because they were offering it, but I just could not get myself together in time to get the 3-month free thing for Shopify. And I'm like, damn, you know, so, you know, and not to beat up on myself, but me realizing that me delaying things sometimes is something that actually causes me more stress than giving myself permission to just procrastinate, right? And so, you know, what I realized this time around when I started talking with a business partner, actually Daisy Davis, who is on the most recent episode of Inspirations, where she was talking about nonviolent communication, and she has a lot of different businesses she's working on as well. And she was just really inspiring me to move forward with this new venture that I've been talking about for, I guess, I don't know, for a while. I mean, not too long, but I was just saying, you know, I have to do one thing at a time, one thing at a time. And I have like this busybody ADD brain that just kind of goes, oh, this and ooh, this and ooh, this and ooh, this. And it just kind of goes all over the place, right? As you can tell in today's episode a little bit, I know it's kind of coming out. But one of the things that I noticed is that once I started talking to her about, yeah, I want to do this new venture, and, you know, it's about, you know, mind fitness training, and she's talking about her website, and I'm giving her ideas for her website. And I got so excited and so anxious, like just thinking about being excited for her website, that it inspired me to start working on my new website. And so literally in a matter of like less than a week, I'm almost halfway done with my website. And it's been an incredible, amazing, wonderful experience to see how far I've come from last year. And that's why, guys, it's so important to set your intentions at the beginning of each year, because you want to see that progress. You know, we're meant to progress. We're not meant to stay stagnant and be complacent and just stay stuck and just, you know, go from year after year after year saying, yeah, I'm going to do that. Yeah, I want to do that. Yeah, I should, I need to. Stop and write it down and hold yourself accountable to it. And if you are lucky enough to have people in your life, you have accountability partners in your life that remind you and ask you, I'm like, hey, so how's that going? Don't fucking bite their head off. Thank them. They're in support of you. They're not nagging you. That's just something that your ego is making up because there are underlying issues behind how it is that you're feeling. What they're saying is just the stimulus of what it is that you're already feeling inside. But if there was nothing for them to tap into about how you feel about yourself and how you feel about your lack of progress, what they are saying would not stimulate you to get defensive and get upset or frustrated or irritated or what have you. It would inspire you to say, oh my gosh, thank you for reminding me of that. Thank you for holding me to that. Thank you for calling me higher. And that's just something that is part of your everyone's personal progress. Having people in your life that want to see you succeed and excel in your life. Um, these are good people to have in your life in some capacity or another, whether it's, romantic partner or friend or business partner or associate. I mean, to have these people in your life that really lift you up and remind you of, what you're capable of. Just think that anytime that we snap at someone who is calling us higher, realize that the person that's snapping back isn't our inner being, it's our ego. And if we take, something that we've heard from an inspirational movie or spiritual talk, and we use that as a way to, shame that person for calling us higher, just know that's not in alignment with who we really are and who we're really meant to be. We are meant to fulfill our life in all areas. That is our work. And if we're not doing that, understanding why is also our work. So do that work. So maybe your intention is something just as simple as, why do I get so defensive when someone reminds me of what I said that I was going to do? And trust me, that is work to do that. It is brave, it is courageous, it is strong, and it's responsible. It is morally responsible. So if you haven't already, definitely sit down and write out your intentions for the rest of this year. Even just start with a month, right? See, what is it that you want to feel when you see the ball drop in Times Square, at the end of 2021? What is it that you want to thank yourself for having accomplished this year? Think about that moment, but think about it right now in the moment today, and ask yourself today, what is the next right step? What is the next right step? And take those steps. Take those steps. And when you hear that side of you, there's a different sides of you. Just be able to recognize when your spiritual ego is talking, when your ego is talking, and when your inner being is calling. Because sometimes what we feel when we get reminded of something that we're not doing for ourselves, we feel bad that we're letting ourselves down, right? And let's go back to the beginning where I say, talk to that little child in us. That little child in us is still there. It didn't die. It didn't go away. It's still in there in our core. That is, 0 to 7 years old is where all of our subconscious programs are based. Like, that's where they all come from. And so if we can take the time to say, like, what is it that's hurting us? Sometimes what's hurting us is not what the other person is saying, but about what we're not doing for ourselves. Because we remember subconsciously, even if we're not thinking about it. So subconsciously, we're thinking about that little boy or that little girl inside of us, right? And we are thinking about how little version of us, little Nazra, I'm thinking about how as a kid, I knew not to give up on myself. I knew not to give up because something was hard. I knew not to give up because something was a challenge. I knew not to give up just because I kept stumbling or falling or tripping. I knew not to give up. And if we can stay true to that inner being, that's our inner being right there. That's our inner being saying, keep going, get up again. And realize, what are some of the things that are holding us back? And don't bullshit yourself and tell yourself that you're being gentle with yourself, because it's crap. It's crap. I mean, if there's something like where you've been sick or, you've lost a loved one or something like that, that's been some type of trauma, right, in your life, obviously that is a moment where that actually makes sense. All right. But still doing the inner work, as long as you have your mind, you have a moral responsibility to yourself to understand how your mind works, understand your mental and emotional and spiritual trauma. And it doesn't always have to, people always want to blow trauma out of proportion and think it means that you had to have been in a war or you needed to have suffered some type of physical violence or sexual trauma. All trauma is trauma. And it all has a way of being really sneaky and rearing its ugly head of how it really has communicated these false beliefs about ourselves, about how we're not enough. But when we were a kid, we didn't have enough of that to really believe that we weren't enough. I don't think we ever thought that we would never walk, that we would never be able to climb stairs. There was just something in us that always knew that if we keep going, if we keep doing this, we keep trying, we're going to get it. And even though we might not have had the vocabulary and the capacity to articulate ourselves in that way, our inner being, our inner knowingness knew. And that's why we didn't give up. And that's why you shouldn't give up on you. That's why I'm not going to give up on me, and I'm not going to give up on you. And that's why it's still early, you guys. It's still early in 2021. So maybe you've kind of trailed off and, kind of just been marathon watching Hulu and Netflix. Okay, guilty. I've been there, done that, but just keep going, okay? Let me know in the chat, like, what are some of your intentions for the new year? What are some of the things that you feel like have been holding you back? What are some of the things that you would like to be held accountable for? And let's do this together. We are in this together. So I said in the beginning of the year I was going to follow up with you guys, and now I'm following up with you guys, and I'm going to keep following up on you guys, because one thing that we're not going to do this year that we may have done in years past is that we're not going to sit and make a little list on a Post-it somewhere that we kind of discard and throw away and forget all about, and then we look at it later and we're like, oh yeah, right, that thing. We're going to write out our intentions. We're going to put it in, a journal or a piece of paper right next to our bed, like right on our nightstand, where every single day we look at it and we remember what we're not giving up on, what we're doing all of this for. And we're going to start to meditate, and we're going to breathe. We're going to breathe into our hearts, and we are going to feel the gratitude of already having manifested these amazing, amazing accomplishments. And I want you to go ahead and start calling them accomplishments, because that's one thing that we have to remember not to do, is to be reactive. We're too reactive. Oh, I'll believe it when I see it. It doesn't work that way. If it really worked that way, then guess what? You probably would have accomplished a lot more by now. So let's do things differently. Let's believe it to receive it. Again, another thing that we can learn from our inner beings as children. We can remember like how, drinking invisible tea for a tea party felt just as real as the real thing. And so, we didn't wait until, our mom or dad or whoever on to like, oh, okay, do you want me to pour some tea into your cup before you can play tea party? No, we were already celebrating it. We were already living it. We were already experiencing it. And that's where we want to come from. We want to realize that, and waiting for something outside of us to happen in order to feel gratitude is reactive. We now know that living in a way that is reactive is not proactive. We now know that living in a way that is proactive is what brings about the manifestation. So if you're dreading something to happen before it happens, okay, we can dread something to happen before it happens, and we can actually materialize it, that dreadful thing happening, simply because we dread it. Dread is something that happens before the manifestation of something to dread. And I know a lot of times, people will say like, no, I was really believing, I was really hopeful, and just consider the fact that maybe there are things that you could do better that you could do differently. Because if the way you were doing things all the time served you, it should serve you more oftentimes than it doesn't. And there are subconscious layers behind everything. So you guys, that's your work. That's your homework. That's your life work. That's your out in the field work. That is your inner work. Figure out what that is for you. And again, please share with me in the chat, and definitely let's do things amazing this year. Let's always top a previous year. Let's always top that. It is possible. So I'm excited to see what you guys have to say. And so again, on Inspirations TV podcast, that's the new channel. So I've kind of taken everything off of the Inspirations platform. That's just my t-shirts and my quotes. And now I'm moving everything that's regarding my podcast onto Inspirations TV podcast. So that's going to be all on IGTV soon. So stay tuned. And until next time, as always, you guys, stay inspired. See you next time.